Captain Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and felt his boots touch the metal floor of Centauri Prime's main docking bay. The air smelled different here. It had a sharp, clean scent that reminded him of electricity after lightning. Around him, dozens of alien species moved through the busy station. Some walked on two legs like humans, others floated in the air or crawled on multiple limbs. The sounds they made filled the air with clicks, whistles, and strange musical tones. Jake had trained for this moment for 3 years. Earth had finally been invited to join the Galactic Council. After decades of careful talks and trade agreements, humanity was about to take its place among the stars. As the head of the Terran Diplomatic Corps team, Jake would represent all of Earth in the formal ceremonies. Lieutenant Lisa Park walked beside him carrying their official documents. She had been working with alien governments for 2 years and knew their customs better than anyone else on the team. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore the crisp blue uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Service. "Remember, Captain," Lisa said quietly as they walked through the station. "The Centauri like direct eye contact. The Krillians prefer to keep their distance, and whatever you do, don't touch a Velnari without permission. They consider it extremely rude." Jake nodded. He had studied all the cultural briefings, but hearing it again helped calm his nerves. This was the most important mission of his career. Earth's future in the galaxy depended on making a good impression. They rode a transport tube through the massive station. Through the clear walls, Jake could see the planet below. Centauri Prime was covered in gleaming cities that stretched from one horizon to the other. Tall towers reached up into the clouds, connected by bridges that sparkled in the sunlight. Ships of every size and shape moved between the towers like a river of metal and light. The Galactic Council building stood at the center of the main city. It was an enormous crystal structure that seemed to grow out of the planet's surface like a mountain, made of glass. As their transport approached, Jake could see thousands of windows reflecting the light of Centauri Prime's twin suns. Inside the building, an alien guide met them at the entrance. The creature stood 7 feet tall on 4 legs and had skin that looked like polished stone. Its voice sounded like wind blowing through caves. "Welcome, humans from Earth," the guide said. "I am Rocksinger Thane. I will take you to the ceremony hall." They walked through corridors filled with art from across the galaxy. Paintings that moved and changed as Jake watched them. Sculptures that sang soft melodies. Walls covered in symbols that glowed with their own light. Everything was beautiful and strange. The ceremony hall was the largest room Jake had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Thousands of seats filled the space, each designed for different types of alien bodies. At the center of the room stood a massive holographic display showing the galaxy. Jake stopped walking and stared at the map. It showed millions of stars connected by glowing lines that marked trade routes and communication channels. Different colors indicated which species controlled which areas of space. The map was incredibly detailed, showing planets, space stations, and shipping lanes across the entire galaxy. But something was wrong. The map simply ended at the borders of human space. Beyond Earth's small territory, there was nothing. No stars, no trade routes, no indication that anything existed past the edge of human-controlled systems. Jake frowned. That couldn't be right. He knew from Earth's own telescopes that there were billions of stars beyond human space. Entire star clusters and nebulae that should be visible on any complete galactic map. But this display showed them as empty void. "Impressive, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. Jake turned to see a tall, thin alien approaching. The creature had blue skin and large black eyes. It wore flowing robes decorated with silver patterns. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri," the alien said. "You must be Captain Morrison. We have heard much about Earth's achievements." "Thank you, Ambassador," Jake replied. "I was just admiring your galactic map. It's remarkable to see our place in the larger picture." Ambassador Veltar's expression changed slightly. The large black eyes seemed to grow even darker. "Yes," Veltar said slowly. "It shows all the important regions of our shared space." Jake pointed toward the edge where human territory ended. "I noticed the map doesn't show what lies beyond our borders. Are those regions unexplored?" The ambassador went very still. Around them, other aliens who had been talking quietly suddenly stopped their conversations. The huge room became uncomfortably quiet. That is to say, Veltar stammered. Perhaps we should focus on the ceremony preparations. There will be time for geographic discussions later. But Jake's curiosity was fully awakened now. I'm just wondering about standard exploration protocols. On Earth, we always map the regions around our territory for defense and trade purposes. Surely the Council has surveyed the areas beyond human space. Ambassador Veltar's blue skin seemed to grow paler. Captain Morrison, I really must insist we move to other topics. The ceremony will begin soon. Lisa touched Jake's arm gently, a warning to let the subject drop. But Jake could see the fear in the ambassador's eyes. Fear about a simple question about maps and exploration. The formal ceremony went smoothly. Jake stood before the assembled, representatives of 47 different species, and read Earth's pledge to uphold galactic law and contribute to interstellar peace. The council members voted unanimously to accept humanity as a full member. During the celebration dinner that followed, Jake mingled with diplomats from across the galaxy. He noticed something strange. Every time he tried to steer conversation toward galactic geography or exploration, the aliens became uncomfortable. They changed the subject or made excuses to walk away. A Krillian trade official named Hexstar was telling Jake about shipping routes between different systems when Jake asked casually, "Do any of your trade ships ever venture into the regions beyond human space?" Hexstar's forearms went rigid. The creature's insect-like face twitched nervously. "No," Hexstar said quickly. "No ships go there. No reason to go there. Nothing of interest in those areas. But surely there must be resources or habitable worlds." "Excuse me," Hexstar interrupted. "I must speak with my trade partners now." The alien scurried away, leaving Jake standing alone with his drink. Lisa appeared at his side. "Sir, I've been talking with other human diplomats who have worked out here. They've all noticed the same thing. None of the alien species ever discuss what lies beyond our territory. They have maps of their own regions that are incredibly detailed. But when it comes to the space around human systems, there's nothing. Just blank areas." "That doesn't make sense," Jake said. "These are spacefaring civilizations that have been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years. They must have surveyed every sector by now." "That's what I thought too. But I tried accessing the galactic archives earlier. Any records about exploration or expansion in the last 2 centuries have been classified. And I mean heavily classified. Above my clearance level." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What aren't they telling us?" Later that night, Jake sat in his quarters aboard the human diplomatic ship. He was reviewing the day's events and trying to make sense of what he had observed. The aliens' reactions went beyond simple discomfort. There was genuine fear there. Fear of something connected to the empty spaces on their maps. His personal communicator chimed softly. Jake looked at the screen and saw he had received a message from an unknown sender. The transmission had been encrypted using military-grade security protocols. Jake opened the message. It contained only a few lines of text. "Stop asking questions about the maps for everyone's sake. Some knowledge is too dangerous. The galaxy has been safe for centuries because certain truths remain hidden. Do not disturb what should stay buried." Before Jake could trace the sender or save the message, the text began to dissolve. Within seconds, the entire communication had deleted itself, leaving no trace it had ever existed. Jake stared at the blank screen. His hands were shaking slightly. Someone was watching him. Someone who knew about his questions and was worried enough to send a warning. But what could be so dangerous about empty space that entire civilizations refused to discuss it? What lay beyond the borders of human territory that made advanced, alien species too frightened to even acknowledge its existence? Jake realized that Earth's admission to the Galactic Council might have been just the beginning of a much larger mystery. A mystery that someone clearly wanted to remain unsolved. Jake Morrison could not sleep that night. The warning message kept playing in his mind. Someone out there knew he was asking questions about the maps. Someone who wanted him to stop looking for answers. But Jake had never been the type of person to give up when things got mysterious. The next morning, he met Lisa Park for breakfast in the diplomatic ship's small dining area. The room had large windows that showed Centauri Prime spinning slowly below them. The planet's twin suns cast long shadows across the crystal cities. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," Jake told Lisa as he drank his coffee. "About the classified records in the Galactic archives. There has to be a way to find out more." Lisa looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "I know someone who might help. Dr. Amy Chen works at the Centauri Science Institute. She's a xenoarchaeologist studying ancient alien cultures. She's been asking some of the same questions we have." "How do you know her?" "We went to university together on Earth. She came out here 5 years ago to study alien history. Last time we talked, she mentioned finding strange gaps in the historical records. Entire periods where major civilizations just stopped exploring certain regions of space." Jake nodded. "Can you contact her?" "I already did. She wants to meet us this afternoon. But she insists on meeting somewhere private. She seemed nervous about discussing this over normal communication channels." That afternoon, Jake and Lisa took a transport down to the planet's surface. The city around the Science Institute was filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Students and researchers walked between tall buildings made of the same crystal material as the council chambers. The air hummed with quiet conversations in languages Jake did not recognize. Dr. Amy Chen met them at a small cafe near the edge of the university district. She was a woman in her early 30s with short black hair and intelligent brown eyes. She wore the simple gray clothing that most human researchers preferred. "Lisa told me you've been asking uncomfortable questions," Amy said after they had ordered drinks. "You're not the first human to notice the gaps in galactic knowledge." "What have you discovered?" Jake asked. Amy pulled out a small data tablet and showed them a star chart. "This is what the galaxy looked like according to Centauri records from 500 years ago. Look at the exploration patterns." The chart showed how different alien civilizations had expanded outward from their homeworlds over thousands of years. Trade routes and colonies spread in all directions like growing plants reaching toward sunlight. "Now look at this," Amy said, switching to a different chart. "This shows the same region 300 years ago." Jake studied the new image. The expansion patterns had changed. Instead of growing outward in all directions, the alien civilizations seemed to be avoiding certain areas. Trade routes curved around empty regions of space. Colony ships took longer paths to avoid direct routes. "It's like they hit some kind of barrier," Lisa observed. "Exactly," Amy said. "And look where those barriers are located." She highlighted the avoided regions on the map. They formed a rough circle around what would later become human space. The alien civilizations had been steering clear of Earth's region of the galaxy for centuries, before humans even developed space travel. "I don't understand," Jake said. "Why would they avoid empty space?" Amy leaned forward and lowered her voice. "That's what I've been trying to find out. I've been studying folklore and ancient texts from different species. There are stories that keep appearing in their oldest records. Stories about watchers at the edge and guardians of the deep dark. Watchers? Beings that patrol the outer regions of the galaxy. The stories describe them as protectors who keep something terrible from entering normal space. Different cultures have different names for them, but the descriptions are remarkably similar." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "Do these stories say what the Watchers look like?" Amy smiled grimly. "That's the interesting part. According to the oldest Krillian texts, the Watchers appear to be humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, similar body structure to humans. The Centauri have paintings in their ancient temples that show the same thing." Lisa stared at her friend. "You're suggesting that humans have been in space longer than anyone knows?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm just showing you what I've found. But there's more." Amy switched to another file on her tablet. "I managed to contact a retired Krillian scholar named Thexanen. He's very old, even by Krillian standards. His grandfather was part of an exploration fleet that accidentally entered what we now call human space about 150 years ago." "What happened to them?" 12 ships went in. Only 1 came back. The crew was traumatized and refused to talk about what they had seen. But Thexnin's grandfather left private records that were passed down through his family. Amy showed them copies of handwritten documents covered in Krillian symbols. These describe massive shapes moving through space, ships or structures that were kilometers long, energy readings that made their instruments malfunction, and an overwhelming sense of being watched by something vast and ancient. Jake read the translated text on the screen. The description was unsettling. The Krillian explorer had written about seeing things that defied physics, objects that appeared solid but cast no shadows, lights that moved in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The most disturbing part, Amy continued, is what happened to the crew after they returned. 3 of them died within a year, apparently from some kind of psychological breakdown. The others lived normal lives but never spoke about space exploration again. They avoided looking at star charts and refused to discuss anything related to the outer galaxy. Have other species had similar experiences? Lisa asked. Amy nodded. I've found at least 6 different incidents over the past 2 centuries. Exploration ships from various civilizations that wandered too close to what is now human territory. The pattern is always the same. Ships either disappear completely or return with severely traumatized crews. She showed them military reports that had been declassified decades later. Each report described similar phenomena: massive objects moving through space without following normal physics, energy signatures that registered on sensors but made no scientific sense. And always, the feeling of being observed by something incomprehensibly large. The military reports all recommend the same thing, Amy said. Avoid the region entirely, mark it as hazardous space, and redirect all traffic around it. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing what he had learned. So the entire galactic community has been avoiding human space for centuries because of these encounters. But what does that mean for us? Are we somehow connected to these watchers? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Amy replied. I've requested permission to interview Thexnin directly. He's the only being still alive who has direct family knowledge of what happened in those early encounters. Will he talk to us? He's agreed to meet, but only in secret. He's afraid that discussing this topic might attract the wrong kind of attention. He wants to meet tomorrow night at his private residence outside the main city. As they prepared to leave the cafe, Amy grabbed Jake's arm. There's something else you should know. I've been tracking communication patterns between the major galactic governments. Every time there's any kind of incident near human space, they send encrypted messages to each other. High-priority communications that use the most secure channels available. What kind of incidents? Ships going missing, unusual energy readings, reports of strange objects in deep space. The governments are definitely coordinating their response to something. And whatever it is, they're working very hard to keep it secret. That evening, Jake returned to his quarters on the diplomatic ship. He stood at the window looking out at the stars and thinking about everything Amy had told him. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of known space, something was watching. Something that had been keeping the galaxy's major civilizations away from Earth's region for centuries. As he prepared for bed, Jake's communicator chimed again. Another encrypted message had arrived. This time, the sender had included a location and a time. The message read, "If you want real answers, come alone. Dock 47, level 15, midnight, tell no one." Jake stared at the message until it deleted itself. Someone wanted to meet him. Someone who claimed to have the answers he was looking for. But every instinct told him this could be dangerous. The warning from the previous night had made it clear that some people wanted these secrets to stay buried. Jake made his decision. He had to know the truth, no matter what risks were involved. At 11:45 p.m., he left his quarters and headed for Dock 47. The corridors of the space station were nearly empty at this hour. His footsteps echoed in the silence as he walked toward what might be the most important meeting of his life. Behind him, hidden in the shadows, someone followed at a careful distance. Jake Morrison walked through the empty corridors of the space station. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls. The lights were dimmed for the night cycle, casting long shadows that seemed to move as he passed. Dock 47 was in the lower levels of the station, an area usually reserved for cargo ships and maintenance crews. As he rode the elevator down to level 15, Jake wondered if he was making a mistake. The mysterious message could be a trap. But his need for answers was stronger than his fear. Earth deserved to know why the galaxy treated human space like a forbidden zone. Dock 47 was darker than the main corridors. Emergency lights provided just enough illumination to see the walkways and loading equipment. Jake checked his watch. It was exactly midnight. He stood near the entrance and waited. "Captain Morrison," a voice called from the shadows. An alien figure stepped into the light. It was tall and thin, with pale green skin and large yellow eyes. Jake recognized the species as Velnari, one of the older civilizations in the galaxy. The being wore a dark cloak that covered most of its body. "Who are you?" Jake asked. "My name is Kethsol. I am a member of the Galactic Council's inner circle. I sent you the message." "Why did you want to meet in secret?" Kethsol looked around nervously. "Because what I am about to tell you could change everything. For centuries, the Council has kept certain truths hidden from younger species. We believed it was necessary for galactic stability." Jake felt his heart rate increase. "What truths?" "The truth about your species, Captain Morrison. The truth about why no one dares explore beyond human space." Before Kethsol could continue, bright lights suddenly flooded the dock area. Armed, security forces surrounded them from all directions. Jake counted at least 20 officers from different alien species, all pointing weapons at him and Kethsol. "Step away from the human," a commanding voice ordered. Commander Zextar of the Zentari security forces approached with several of his officers. The blue-skinned alien's expression was stern and unforgiving. "Kethsol, you are under arrest for violation of the Classified Information Protection Act," Zextar announced. "Captain Morrison, you are to come with us for questioning." "Wait," Jake protested. "I haven't done anything wrong. I just wanted to understand why the galactic maps are incomplete." "That is exactly the problem," Zextar replied. "Some questions should never be asked." They were taken to the Zentari security headquarters in separate vehicles. Jake was placed in a small room with white walls and a single table. He sat there for what felt like hours, wondering what was happening to Kethsol and whether Lisa and Amy knew he was missing. Finally, the door opened, but instead of Commander Zextar, 5 beings entered the room. Jake recognized them as representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy. A Zentari elder, a Krillian High Council member, a Velnari diplomat, a massive Thorgon warrior, and a floating energy being from the Astral Collective. "Captain Morrison," the Zentari elder spoke. "I am Council Prime Velquan. We apologize for the dramatic circumstances, but your investigation has forced our hand." "What investigation? I just asked about maps." "You asked the right questions, Captain. Questions that have led you closer to secrets we have protected for over 3,000 years. The Velnari diplomat stepped forward. "We are the Inner Council. We represent the oldest civilizations in this galaxy. We have been the guardians of knowledge that could destroy the peace we have built." Jake felt confused and frightened. "I don't understand. What knowledge could be so dangerous?" Council Prime Velquan activated a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed the galaxy, but this map was different from any Jake had seen before. It showed the true extent of space beyond the normal galactic boundaries, and in the outer regions far beyond any known civilization, there were markings that indicated massive structures and energy sources. "This is the complete galactic map, Captain Morrison, the one we show to no one except the Inner Council." Jake stared at the display. The area marked as human space was tiny compared to what lay beyond it. Huge regions of space were marked with symbols that meant nothing to him. "What are those structures?" he asked. "They are human installations, Captain, built and maintained by your true people." "My true people? I don't understand." The Krillian Council member made a series of clicking sounds that Jake's translator interpreted as a sigh. "Captain Morrison, the humans living in what we call human space are not the original human civilization. You are the descendants of colonists who chose to forget their past and live simple lives." Jake felt the room spinning around him. "That's impossible. Earth is humanity's homeworld. We evolved there over millions of years. Earth is one of hundreds of worlds that your ancestors terraformed and settled, Council Prime Velquan explained. The original human civilization spanned half this galaxy at its peak. They were the most advanced species anyone had ever encountered. The holographic display changed to show historical data. Star charts from thousands of years ago revealed a vast human empire that stretched across enormous distances. Planets marked, with human settlements, space stations larger than moons, ships that could travel between galaxies. What happened to them? Jake whispered. They discovered something. The floating energy being communicated through harmonic frequencies. Something that threatened not just our galaxy, but all of reality itself. The Thorgon warrior spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. Beyond the edge of normal space, there are entities that view physical matter as a disease. They have been trying to enter our universe for millions of years. Your ancestors were the first to understand the threat. The display showed images that made Jake feel sick to look at. Twisted shapes that hurt his eyes. Patterns of energy that seemed to move even though they were just pictures. Things that looked like they had been designed by intelligence that followed no rules Jake could understand. These entities exist in spaces between dimensions, Council Prime Velquan continued. They consume reality itself. Every star, every planet, every living being would be dissolved if they ever found a way into our universe. The original humans developed technology to reinforce the barriers between dimensions, the Velnari explained. They became the guardians of reality, fighting a war that most civilizations cannot even imagine. Jake struggled to process what he was hearing. Are you saying that there are still humans out there fighting these entities? Yes, Captain. They have been at war for over 3,000 years. Most of them have evolved beyond normal human limitations. They exist partially in the same dimensional spaces as the entities they fight. But why doesn't anyone know about this? Why is it kept secret? The Krillian answered this time. Because knowledge of the entities can allow them to influence normal space. The more people know about them, the stronger their ability to break through becomes. We have learned this through terrible experience. Council Prime Velquan looked directly at Jake. 2,000 years ago, a young civilization called the Nexari learned about the dimensional entities. They became obsessed with studying them. Within 50 years, their entire star system had been consumed. Reality simply stopped existing in their region of space. Since then, the energy being continued, we have maintained strict secrecy. Only the Inner Council knows the complete truth. We support the human guardians with resources and technology, but we never speak of them openly. Jake felt overwhelmed. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was wrong. Why are you telling me this now? Because the situation has changed, the Thorgon said grimly. The entities are growing stronger. They have found new ways to influence our reality without fully entering it. The human guardians are losing the war. The holographic display showed recent reports from across the galaxy. Ships disappearing in flashes of impossible light. Stars flickering out of existence. Areas of space where the laws of physics no longer applied. The Guardians have sent messages to the Inner Council, Council Prime Velquan said. For the first time in millennia, they need help. They need fresh perspectives and new approaches to the war. Most importantly, the Velnari added, they need their descendants to remember who they truly are and choose to join the fight. Jake stared at the alien leaders surrounding him. You want me to convince humanity to join a war against entities from another dimension? We want you to give your people the choice, Council Prime Velquan replied. The choice that was taken from them when their ancestors decided to hide on peaceful worlds like Earth. But if this knowledge is dangerous, won't telling people about it make things worse? Perhaps, the energy being admitted. But the alternative is the slow extinction of everything we know. The Guardians cannot hold the barriers forever. Eventually, the entities will break through. The Krillian moved closer to Jake. There is something else, Captain Morrison. Something that makes this decision urgent. A new image appeared on the holographic display. It showed a region of space near human territory, where reality itself seemed to be breaking down. Stars twisted into impossible shapes. Space folded in on itself like crumpled paper. 3 days ago, the entities succeeded in creating a small breach in our dimension, Council Prime Velquan announced. The human guardians contained it, but just barely. Their losses were severe. Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Earth transport ship heading home. 3 weeks had passed since his meeting with the Inner Council. The journey back to Earth gave him time to think about everything he had learned. But thinking only made the burden feel heavier. Lisa Park found him staring out the window at the stars. She had been quiet since learning the truth about humanity's past. The knowledge that their entire history was a lie weighed on both of them. The Earth Defense Council wants to meet with us as soon as we arrive, Lisa said. They received our preliminary report and have been asking questions we can't answer over long-distance communications. Jake nodded. He had sent a basic summary of their discoveries to Earth, but the full truth was too dangerous to transmit through normal channels. If the Inner Council was right about knowledge being dangerous, then even talking about the dimensional entities could make things worse. You think they'll believe us? Lisa asked. Some will. Others will think we've been tricked by alien governments trying to manipulate Earth into some kind of galactic conflict. Lisa sat down next to him. What do you think we should do? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I think we have to tell them everything. Earth deserves to know the truth about who we really are. Meanwhile, on the other side of human space, Commander Ben Taylor received the strangest orders of his military career. He was to take his squadron of 12 ships to coordinates, on the very edge of human territory. The mission briefing was almost empty of details. No explanation of what they would find there. No standard objectives or rules of engagement. Sir, Lieutenant Carol Hayes said as she reviewed the orders, these coordinates are in completely empty space. There's nothing on our star charts for that region. Ben studied the mission parameters again. It says we're to maintain complete communication silence once we reach the outer marker. No contact with Earth or any other human ships until we return. That's not standard protocol for any mission type I know about. Neither is being ordered to prepare for contact with allied human forces that aren't part of the regular fleet. Ben replied. The squadron left Mars base 3 days later. Ben's flagship was the TDS Defender, a heavy cruiser designed for long-range patrol missions. The other 11 ships in his command included destroyers, scouts, and a supply vessel. As they traveled toward the outer edge of human space, Ben wondered what they would find there. The journey took 2 weeks. As they approached the coordinates, Ben noticed something strange on the long-range sensors. There were energy signatures ahead of them, but they didn't match any known human technology. The readings were too powerful and too advanced. Sir, Lieutenant Hayes called from the sensor station. I'm detecting multiple large objects directly ahead. They appear to be ships, but they're massive. The largest one is over 3 kilometers long. Before Ben could respond, his communications console activated. A voice spoke with a calm, professional tone that sounded completely human. TDS. Defender, this is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Guardian Fleet. Permission to come aboard, Commander Taylor. Ben stared at the console. Admiral Sullivan was not a name he recognized from any Earth military records, but her voice had the authority of someone used to command. Permission granted, Admiral, Ben replied. A small craft detached from the largest ship ahead of them and approached the Defender. As it came closer, Ben could see that it was built using technology far beyond anything Earth possessed. The hull seemed to shimmer with energy, and it moved through space without any visible propulsion system. Admiral Kate Sullivan stepped aboard the Defender through an airlock that somehow connected perfectly with the alien craft. She looked human, but there was something different about her. Her eyes seemed older than her face suggested, and she moved with a confidence that spoke of experiences Ben could not imagine. Commander Taylor, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for responding to our request. We have much to discuss. Ben shook her hand and noticed that her grip was stronger than any human he had ever met. Admiral, I have to admit I'm confused about this mission. My orders were very limited. That's understandable. Your government is still deciding how much truth they want their people to know. Come with me to my ship. There are things you need to see. Ben left Lieutenant Hayes in command of the Defender and followed Admiral Sullivan to her craft. As they traveled between ships, Ben got his first close look at the Guardian fleet. The vessels were unlike anything he had seen before. They looked grown rather than built, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse with internal light. "How long have you been out here?" Ben asked. "I've been with the Guardian fleet for 97 years, Admiral Sullivan replied. "But I was born on Earth, just like you." Ben stared at her. She looked like she was in her 40s. "That's impossible. The work we do changes us, Commander. Fighting in dimensional space requires adapting to environments that normal human biology cannot survive. We become something more than human, but we never stop being human." Admiral Sullivan's flagship was enormous inside. The corridors were filled with beings who looked human, but moved with the same enhanced grace as the Admiral. Ben saw control rooms with technology that seemed to respond to thought rather than physical commands. Windows that showed views of space that hurt to look at directly. "Welcome to the edge of reality, Commander Taylor," Admiral Sullivan said as they entered the main bridge. "This is where your ancestors have been fighting for the last 3,000 years. The bridge had a massive viewing screen that showed space beyond the normal galaxy. But this space was wrong. Colors that had no names, shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Ben's mind could process, and moving through it all, things that made his eyes water just to glimpse them. "Those are the entities, Admiral," Sullivan explained. "Beings of pure malevolent energy that view physical reality as a disease to be cured. They have been trying to break into our universe for millions of years." Ben watched in horror as one of the entities approached what looked like a barrier made of light. Where it touched the barrier, reality began to break down. Space twisted into impossible configurations. The laws of physics simply stopped working. "How many of you are out here fighting them?" At our peak, there were millions of Guardian ships protecting the barriers between dimensions. Now we have perhaps 50,000 vessels left. "The entities are winning, Commander Taylor. We're losing this war." Admiral Sullivan led Ben to another section of the ship. Here, he saw humans working with technology that seemed like magic. They were reinforcing the dimensional barriers, using their own life energy to strengthen the walls between realities. Each Guardian gives up their normal human existence to become something that can survive in dimensional space, Admiral Sullivan explained. "We become partially energy beings ourselves. It's the only way to fight the entities effectively." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because we need help. For the first time in our history, we cannot hold the barriers alone. The entities have found new ways to attack reality itself. 3 weeks ago, they succeeded in creating a small breach that took us 4 days to seal." Admiral Sullivan stopped walking and looked directly at Ben. "We estimate we have less than 8 months before they achieve a permanent breakthrough. When that happens, every star in this galaxy will be consumed within days." Ben felt cold despite the warm air on the ship. "What do you need from us?" "We need fresh minds, new approaches to the war. Most importantly, we need our descendants on Earth to remember who they truly are and choose to help us. But if this knowledge is dangerous, won't telling people make things worse?" "Yes, it will. Knowledge of the entities does make them stronger, but the alternative is the end of everything. We've reached the point where the risk of knowledge is less than the certainty of extinction." Admiral Sullivan activated a holographic display that showed recent intelligence reports. The entities were massing for what appeared to be a final assault on the dimensional barriers. Their attacks were becoming more coordinated and more powerful. "We've developed a plan that might work," she continued. "Using a combination of our ancient technology and modern Earth science, we could create a new type of dimensional barrier. But it requires volunteers who are willing to undergo the transformation process." "What kind of transformation?" "The same. One that all Guardians undergo. You become something between human and energy being. You gain the ability to exist in dimensional space and fight the entities directly, but you can never return to normal human life." Ben studied the display showing the massing entities. There were thousands of them, possibly millions. Each one was larger than Earth's moon and infinitely more dangerous. How many volunteers would you need? At minimum, 10,000 new Guardians, preferably more. And we need them soon. The entities are preparing for their final assault. Admiral Sullivan led Ben back to the bridge. Through the viewing screen, he could see Guardian ships moving in formations that seemed to follow no physical laws. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Commander Taylor, I want you to return to Earth with this knowledge. Tell your leaders what you've seen. Give your people the choice between comfortable ignorance and the burden of protecting reality itself. Jake Morrison stood before the Earth Defense Council in the secure meeting room beneath Geneva. 50 of Earth's most powerful leaders sat around the curved table, their faces showing every emotion from disbelief to terror. Jake had just finished, presenting everything he had learned about humanity's true history and the war being fought at the edge of reality. President Sarah Walsh of the North American Federation was the first to speak. Captain Morrison, you're asking us to believe that our entire understanding of human history is false, that we're descendants of an ancient spacefaring civilization that's been fighting monsters from another dimension for thousands of years. Understand how it sounds, Madam President, but the evidence is overwhelming. Commander Taylor's report confirms everything the Inner Council told us. General Mark Rodriguez looked at the data crystal that Ben Taylor had brought back from the HFY Guardian fleet. The technology specifications on this device are centuries ahead of anything we possess. Our scientists can barely understand how it works. That's because our ancestors evolved beyond normal human limitations, Jake explained. The Guardians had to adapt to survive in dimensional space. They became something more than human while fighting to protect everything we know. Dr. Lisa Park activated a holographic display showing the Guardian ships that Ben's squadron had encountered. The assembled leaders stared at vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built, their hulls pulsing with energy that defied explanation. Chancellor Wei Lin of the Asian Alliance shook her head. Even if we accept that this is real, you're talking about asking our citizens to volunteer for a transformation that will strip away their humanity, to fight in a war that most people cannot even comprehend. The alternative is extinction, Ben Taylor said quietly. I've seen what those entities can do. They don't just destroy matter or energy. They erase the very concept of existence. If they break through, it won't be death. It will be as if we never existed at all. The room fell silent as the leaders processed this information. Prime Minister James Clark of the European Union was the first to ask the practical question that everyone was thinking. How much time do we have? Admiral Sullivan estimates less than 8 months, Ben replied. The entities are massing for what appears to be their final assault on the dimensional barriers. President Walsh stood up and walked to the large window that showed the city of Geneva below. People were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that reality itself was under threat. If we tell the public about this, it will cause panic on a scale we've never seen, she said. How do we ask people to volunteer for a mission that will fundamentally change what they are? Jake had been thinking about this problem during the entire journey home. We don't force anyone. We tell them the truth and let them choose. Some will volunteer because they understand the stakes. Others will choose to live whatever normal life remains to them. And if not enough people volunteer, General Rodriguez asked, then we fight with whoever we have, Ben answered. But I believe more people will step forward than we expect. Humans have always been willing to sacrifice themselves for something greater. Dr. Amy Chen, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. There's another consideration. According to the Guardian records, knowledge of the entities makes them stronger. By telling people about this threat, we're actually making it easier for them to break through. That's a risk we have to take, Jake replied. The Guardians can't hold the barriers alone anymore. Without help, the entities will break through anyway. The debate continued for hours. Some leaders argued for keeping the truth secret and finding other ways to help the Guardians. Others insisted that humanity deserved to know about their heritage and make an informed choice about their future. Finally, President Walsh called for a vote. By a narrow margin, the council decided to reveal the truth to the public. They would announce humanity's real history and ask for volunteers to join the Guardian fleet. The announcement was made simultaneously across all of Earth's communication networks. President Walsh addressed the world from the United Nations building in New York, with leaders from every major nation standing behind her. "Citizens of Earth," she began, "today we must share with you a truth that will change how you see your place in the universe." She explained humanity's ancient heritage, the war against the dimensional entities and the desperate need for volunteers. The presentation included footage from Ben Taylor's encounter with the Guardian fleet and testimony from the Galactic Inner Council. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Some people refused to believe the announcement and dismissed it as an elaborate hoax. Others panicked, convinced that the end of the world was imminent. But a surprising number of people responded with determination and courage. Within 24 hours, over 50,000 people had volunteered to undergo the Guardian transformation. They came from every walk of life. Scientists who wanted to study dimensional physics, soldiers who understood the concept of sacrifice for the greater good, ordinary citizens who simply couldn't bear the thought of their children growing up in a universe under threat. Jake Morrison was among the first to volunteer. He stood in line at the London Processing Centre with hundreds of other volunteers, waiting for his turn to speak with the Guardian recruiters who had arrived from Admiral Sullivan's fleet. Lisa Park found him there. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Once you undergo the transformation, you can never come back to normal life." "I have to do this," Jake replied. "I'm the one who started asking questions about the maps. I need to see this through to the end." "What about your family?" Jake thought about his sister and her children living their peaceful lives in California. "I'm doing this for them, so they can continue to have normal lives without worrying about entities from another dimension." Dr. Amy Chen had also volunteered, along with several thousand other scientists and researchers. She stood with Ben Taylor in the processing area, reviewing the technical specifications for Guardian technology. "The transformation process is fascinating," Amy said, studying the data. "They're not just changing our bodies, they're altering our consciousness so we can perceive and interact with dimensional space." Ben nodded. "Admiral Sullivan warned me that we'll still be human, but we'll also be something more. Our thoughts will work differently. Our understanding of reality will expand beyond what normal humans can comprehend." The transformation process took place on Guardian ships that had moved into Earth's solar system. Jake boarded the transport that would take him to Admiral Sullivan's flagship, along with the first group of volunteers. As Earth grew smaller behind them, he wondered if he would ever see his home planet again. Admiral Sullivan met the new recruits personally. She looked at the thousands of humans who had chosen to sacrifice their normal lives for the greater good. "Welcome to the Guardian fleet," she said. "You are about to become part of something that has protected reality itself for 3,000 years. The transformation will change you in ways you cannot imagine, but you will still be human where it matters most, in your hearts and in your determination to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The transformation process was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. It felt like dissolving into pure energy and then being rebuilt atom by atom. When it was complete, he could see things that had been invisible before. The dimensional barriers that kept the entities at bay. The flow of energy between different levels of reality. The ancient Guardian ships moving through spaces that existed outside normal physics. His first mission was to help reinforce a weak point in the dimensional barriers where the entities had been concentrating their attacks. Jake worked alongside Guardians who had been fighting for decades, learning to use technology that responded to thought and will rather than physical controls. The war was more terrible than anything he had imagined. The entities were not just powerful, they were intelligent and malevolent. They seemed to take pleasure in unmaking reality, in causing existence itself to collapse into nothingness. But the new volunteers brought fresh energy and new ideas to the ancient conflict. Dr. Amy Chen developed improved barrier technologies that were more efficient than previous designs. Commander Ben Taylor organized new battle formations that used Earth's military tactics adapted for dimensional warfare. Most importantly, the volunteers brought hope. For the first time in centuries, the Guardian fleet was growing instead of shrinking. Admiral Sullivan watched her new recruits adapt to their transformed existence and felt something she had not experienced in decades. Optimism. 6 months after, the first volunteers completed their transformation. The entities launched their anticipated final assault. Millions of them attacked the dimensional barrier simultaneously, trying to overwhelm the Guardian defenses through sheer numbers. The battle lasted for 3 weeks. Guardian ships fought in formations that spanned multiple dimensions. The new barrier technologies held against attacks that would have broken through the old defenses. And throughout it all, the transformed volunteers fought with the courage and determination that had always defined humanity at its best. When the assault finally ended, the entities retreated deeper into the spaces between dimensions.